Hi, my name is Jessica Lunceford. I'm here to talk about what I did through my service learning volunteering. I did my hours at Johnson City Medical Center. I was the front information desk clerk. People came to me throughout the day to ask where patients' rooms were, where they needed to go for certain things. I answered the phone and directed people, basically anything that people needed help with. I came in contact with a lot of people throughout the day. Probably hundreds came through the door, so I was able to put my service to good use. Some information about the hospital would be that the Johnson City Medical Center is a non-profit hospital. Most of the funds come through donations. The funding's sufficient enough to get by, but there could always be more help. One way that the hospital is able to go through with their funds being just their donations, it has a lot to do with the volunteers. There are so many different departments that volunteers can go in for. There can be student volunteers, adult volunteers, senior volunteers. I mean, the list is endless. There are endless departments, transportation, just going and visiting. You can do front information desk like I did. There's the food department. There's even a way that you can volunteer while at home. They have some different projects that people do, like knitting caps and sweaters for the newborn infants at the hospital, or sending cards, e-cards to patients that are in the hospital. Possibilities are really endless. And it's not just at the medical center in Johnson City. Most Mountain States Health Alliances offer a volunteer program regardless of your age and ability. The slide you just saw was the options of all the places that you could be a volunteer at the medical center. I believe there were 24 on that list, but there are way more than the ones that were put on there. Those are just an overview of the things that you can do, but that list just really shows all of the departments. Really, there's just so many to even begin to explain. For my service, I didn't know that so many volunteers were involved in the hospital. I guess I never really thought about it before this class. With that being said, I believe the hospital would find it really hard to stay open if not for the volunteers. Volunteering at the medical center, I really learned how important it is to the community, no matter where you're volunteering, as long as you're putting time and effort into helping others. I learned how to open up to people that I don't really know and learn to be more social. People would come to the desk and ask, questions about their family members, and even if I didn't have answers all the time, they would still want to know, are they going to be okay? How am I going to do this? And I would have to give them, support to basically get them through the struggles that they're going through. So I really learned how to be more comfortable opening myself up to strangers. I learned a lot about my community and the people in it. I knew that a lot of people struggled around here, especially with medical expenses and basically just medical emergencies, but working through this service learning class, I really learned how many people come through the doors. People would come through the doors that I knew from Elizabethan, and that just really showed me how many people that the medical center touches on a daily basis. Not only did I learn about the front desk, which is where I did my service, I learned that there are other spots that were of interest to me that I'm actually going to work in the spring. I'm going to school for radiography, so I'm going to be volunteering in the radiography department around January. So I'll be given time after this class as well. If I could change anything about the agency, the only thing that I can think of would be to get more volunteers in. The medical center really struggles with the volunteer involvement. It's really easy to go in and volunteer and spend just 3 to 4 hours once a week just doing something that you find enjoyable. It's a benefit to everyone, including yourself. Everyone is going to end up in the hospital at some point, whether it be yourself or a family member. So ultimately, I think it's important to give back, because when you're going to need something, that's where you're going to go.
This is a board about my service at the medical center. If we look right here, this is just a few pictures of volunteers that have helped out, mainly student volunteers. I actually got these from the newsletter that the volunteers publish. This is the areas of opportunity for student volunteers. And it doesn't only apply to student volunteers, it could be anyone else, but that just shows you how many different places one could volunteer. This is the mission of volunteers. It says the volunteers at Mountain States Health Alliance are a team of people dedicated to high-quality, patient-centered care. It is our belief that working together as a team, sharing a common objective of excellent service, is what has earned Mountain States Health Alliance facilities the recognition of being part of the finest healthcare providers in our region. We are committed to providing services to patients in a caring, loving, and respectful way. Volunteers are helping Mountain States Health Alliance to meet the needs of all of our patients and their families in an environment of care, understanding, and compassion. That right there explains that basically when we're volunteering, we're not there to serve ourselves or to try to make ourselves feel better. We're there to serve the people that are in the hospital and their family members, to make sure that they're cared for and make sure that they're getting the services that they deserve. Moving on, this is a picture of the MRI tube at the medical center. This is where I will be doing my volunteer service in the spring. I'm actually going back to the radiology department to learn a little about what the volunteers do there, and it will also help me in my future job, because this is what I'm going to school for. Right here is what the volunteers do. It says Volunteers and Auxiliary Resources is responsible for planning, developing, and managing all Mountain States Health Alliance volunteers and volunteer programs. Our programs offer excellent opportunities to serve others and give back to the community, and are a vital component of Mountain States Health Alliance's commitment to patient-centered care. Volunteers serve in a variety of roles every day, supplementing paid team members and contributing to Mountain States Health Alliance's mission of bringing loving care to healthcare. And during Mountain States Health Alliance fiscal year 2012, the volunteers contributed 183,287 hours of services for a dollar value of over $3.9 million. This amount of hours shows exactly how important volunteers are for the medical center. Without them, none of those hours would have been filled, and that $3.9 million worth of work would have gone untouched, and it's untelling what would have happened if the volunteers wouldn't have been there in the year 2012 or any other time to help out the hospital.